So a couple of days ago, I put out a tweet that said shockproof is the worst decoration ever made. Now, initially, I made that tweet kind of like half jokingly because I had been playing multiplayer in Sunbreak. I've been grinding anomaly ranks, as you guys are most likely aware. And if you've played Monster Hunter for a significant amount of time, you're aware of the fact that when the hunt is over, you're usually just trying to mess around with the other hunters while you're waiting for that 60-second countdown timer to send you back to base. Now, usually, if you're someone with a switch axe or a great sword, you're trying to launch somebody into the air. And if you're someone with a gun lance, you'll be like, oh, let me see if I can nab somebody with a wyvern fire. And, you know, even though the tweet itself is kind of like made in a jokingly fashion, I can't help but say that it felt a little bit disappointing that, you know, I'm at the end of the hunt, I approach the other players, and the other players don't even move. Like, they don't even care. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get him with the wyvern fire, and zzz. And, you know, the wyvern fire goes off, and I hit them dead on, and nothing happens. That is because, for those of you that are not aware, because I understand that some people stopped playing Sunbreak when the anomaly grind kind of got started, what Shockproof does is it prevents any and all friendly fire from happening. So that means, you know, I don't know if bombs trigger Shockproof or not. I would assume you're also immune to bombs. Maybe not. I don't know. But like wyvern fire, Greatsword True Charge Slash, or even the Greatsword launch ability, the Switch Axe, even though I think they nerfed the Switch Axe where the launch ability stopped working at some point during this expansion. But basically anything that would trip the other player or would do anything to the other player, quite simply doesn't work. As a matter of fact, Shockproof works both ways. Not only it prevents the person using Shockproof from getting staggered from any friendly fire, it also prevents their own damaging moves from staggering any teammates. And I understand that a lot of you guys are going to look at that and you're going to be like, well, this is a good thing. That means that I don't have to worry about bothering my teammates. And I don't have to worry about teammates bothering me whenever I'm doing my special attacks, whenever I'm in the zone beating the crap out of the monster. And I understand that point of view. I really do. But something that I kind of tweeted out as a joke, the more I thought about it, the more it became something that I was like, you know what? I think that part of my brain saw that as kind of like a joke tweet because I just want to wyvern fire somebody at the end of a quest, and I think that would be fun. Another part of my brain is actually, you know, legitimately thinking about how this is a pretty bad decoration. And I wanted to make a video about it. But before we get into the, you know, the actual topic that I want to discuss, I want to make a very quick disclaimer here because usually whenever I put out an opinion on Monster Hunter, a lot of people look at me and they're like, oh my god, you're so out of touch, you have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm completely willing to accept that. I very rarely will claim to be the absolute voice of reason. So the idea behind this video is to just kind of start a conversation and see where people land when it comes to the arguments that I'm about to make. I'm not saying this as in like, I want to see Monster Hunter changed forever to fit my view of the game. I just want to pose to you what is my view of the game, and I want to have the conversation. I want to have a civilized discussion about this. I'm not saying that I'm correct. I'm not saying that I'm incorrect. I'm just putting my opinion out there, and I want to have a discussion in the comment sections, and maybe I'll make a follow-up to this video. Maybe we'll even do a poll to see how people feel about this topic, but allow me to ramble on a little bit about something that I'm going to be calling the curse of convenience. So it shouldn't really be news for anyone that whenever we've got restocking back in Monster Hunter World, this was the first time that we got, you know, a proper restocking. Because in GU, you can have restocking in the form of you can like go to an NPC in your ship and you can ask him, oh, deliver supplies for me, and you can even choose what the supplies are, and then they'll be randomly airdropped somewhere in the map and you can go get additional supplies. You'll also get additional supplies midway through a quest, but you don't really have access to the entirety of your inventory, like literally everything that you've ever gathered in the whole game. This was not a thing in previous entries of Monster Hunter. And, you know, after playing through Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter World Iceborne, I realized that I actually didn't like restocking, something that seemed like it was going to be a pretty positive aspect all around, because I mean, hey, my whole inventory is available to me inside the quest. I don't have to leave the quest to go get items. This is so incredibly convenient. I can just go up to one of these camps that we set up, and I have access to my whole inventory. This is friggin' fantastic. But after playing through the whole game, I realized this is actually a bad thing, because it made me a much sloppier hunter. I wouldn't really prepare that much for hunts, because, you know, I jump into the hunt and then I'll just go into camp and figure out, okay, what do I need, what I don't need, blah, 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 just select the things that I need. I'll be hunting a monster. Oh, this monster's beating the crap out of me. Let me go back to camp, get a bunch of potions, and go back to it. It just feels like you become sloppier and sloppier. Now, again, this is my opinion, and I know that a lot of people disagree with me when it comes to this. But for me, I find restocking to be a key aspect that kind of separates Monster Hunter from, say, a boss fight rush game, where you're just like rushing through, killing bosses. The thing that separates Monster Hunter from that genre of game is precisely the preparation aspect, the scavenging aspect. We're actually scavenging and foraging for materials and all of that stuff. And as a matter of fact, it created some pretty memorable moments for myself as a newcomer. Not really as a newcomer. I'd been playing the game for a while, but I'd just never been particularly good before I actually started playing World, because I couldn't really create content around the game, and Japan would get the game. You guys know how that stuff used to work back in the day. But, you know, it would create these interesting situations where I'd go through a hunt, and in that hunt I was really struggling, and I'd go through all of my potions, and then I'd be running around. I'd just run away from the monster, and I'd be running around through the map, and I would look for blue mushrooms, and because back in the day you needed herbs and blue mushrooms to create potions. Then you look for honey so that you can then create mega potions. And I, you know, in the middle of a hunt, I would actually go out and collect these things. Why do you think that hunts have a 50-minute time limit? It's precisely so that you can go out and do other things in the middle of the hunt. It is kind of what, to me personally, again, I'm not saying that I'm the authority or the voice of reason, but to me personally, it is what defines the whole concept of hunting. You're actually hunting. It's not a boss fight. You're not going in there with a set number of potions and just throwing yourself at the monster till the monster dies. You're fighting it. In the old games before World, you would even have to keep track of something like paintballs, which is something that I'll even bring up maybe a little bit later in the video. But you would have to actually use these paintballs to keep track of the monster. And it's, interestingly enough, it's not something that I ever feel like I would miss, because it'd be so frustrating that a paintball would run out. And I would be, oh my god, I don't know where the monster is now. And then there would be mechanics around that, like you'd have the balloon guy, which you would be in certain maps, and once per map he would give you the location of the monster in case you lose track of it. So you'd actually wave at the balloon guy and he'd be like, the monster's over there, and then you have to go and, you know, find the monster and do all of that stuff. And these are things that I personally miss. It's the preparation aspect, the scavenging aspect, these whole mechanics that are not directly tied to just fighting the monster is in a way why it is called Monster Hunter. It's not Monster Killer, not Monster Fighter, Monster Hunter. You're a hunter. It is expected to you to do hunting related things which are beyond just being super effective at your weapon. It involves knowledge of the map. It involves knowledge of where the monster would go in case you would lose the paintball, and you could see, oh, but it's limping, so it's going to go back to its nest, and I know that the nest is in this location, so I can go there. All of that additional knowledge is something that I think brings charm and immersion to the game. I find this, again, these things to be core aspects of the hunt. Now, I got a lot of pushback from stating these opinions before. Apparently, a lot of people don't find these types of activities fun. They don't think it's fun to have to scavenge for materials. A lot of people don't even think it's fun to gather materials, which is why they came up with things like the Steamworks and even I mean, you could always send Palicos to go pick up materials for you. There's always been like a farm type feature. But I feel like they've really ramped those up to an extent where you're not really managing a farm, you're just getting materials for free. That's basically kind of how it goes. I think that farms are a good thing. You know, something like the Argosy in Rise Sunbreak. I think that is a good thing because it makes gathering a little bit more tolerable, but I like there to always be an aspect where you should be gathering a little bit between hunts at least to kind of supplement the rest of your materials. But, you know, like I was saying, I got pushback from saying these things and the fact that I didn't like restocking and all of this stuff because it's apparently too inconvenient. Which is why the title of this video is kind of like the curse of convenience, because there are things that we are losing along the way. And I think that if you watch through this all the way, you're going to be surprised at all of the points that I'm going to be making. Or maybe you won't, who knows. Let me know in the comment section and let's have a conversation about it. Now, another announcement that caught me very much off guard was when they said, I believe that this was before the release of Rise, we're removing hot and cold drinks from the game. Now, these were still present in Monster Hunter World and Iceborne. And basically, for those of you that are not aware, maybe you started playing Monster Hunter on Rise, so you don't know about these things. So I'll explain to you how they work. The way that it works is whenever you're in a hot zone, like, say, a desert or a lava cavern or something like that, only if you're in the specific zone that is hot. So like, say, if you're outside the lava caverns, should be fine. If you're inside the lava caverns where there's actually lava around places, you would be required to drink a cold drink. Otherwise, your hunter would start taking burn damage because he was too hot. There would naturally also be armor skills that would negate this, and it would become its own mechanic where, oh, but if I use this armor, which has, like, you know, I forget what the names of the skills were back in the day, but it would have like a certain skill that would negate the need for you to actually drink a hot and cold drink. Now, when the developers announced that they were removing hot and cold drinks, a majority of the player base was happy about it. They were like, yeah, we don't have to do hot and cold drinks. I even remember talking at length with Gaijin Hunter about this because he was one of the people that was happy. I think since then I kind of like turned him around a little bit on this subject, but I'm not 100% sure what his stance on it is nowadays. But, you know, a lot of people rejoiced. They were like, yeah, way more convenient. I don't have to worry about hot and cold drinks. Now, these hot and cold drinks would basically provide you with a buff, which means it's not just about drinking a potion once and then you're done. You have to, like, reapply it whenever the buff effect runs out. Now, the developers themselves explained that they would sometimes forget to pack the potions in previous games, which would require them to then exit the quest and relaunch the quest. We're talking old games before Monster Hunter World. However, nowadays, you have restocking, which is the topic we were talking about earlier. So if you forget to pack the potions, you could just go to the tent and get them from your inventory, which is all in the tent. Like, the whole of your inventory, every single item that you've ever gathered in the game is available to you, you know, right there in your tent. So to me, this point is a little bit moot. Like the fact that, oh, well, sometimes we'd forget the potions, it was annoying. Well, you put a mechanic in the game that basically makes this not being a problem. But apparently, a majority of the community also thought that restocking was not convenient. It's an inconvenient thing to have to... Not restocking, that hot and cold potions were not convenient. It's an inconvenient thing to have to monitor a buff. This actually worked differently for cold. Like, if you're in a cold area, you would take stamina damage instead of taking health damage. So, you know, there was a difference there. I guess that probably with the way things work in Sunbreak, it would actually be the freezing effect on your wire bugs. I think that would make the most sense. But, you know, an inconvenience to have you just drink a potion every now and then. Now, you might be wondering, well, Rurikhan, why do you care about this? And the reason is because, again, it's one of those things that we're sacrificing in terms of convenience, which is one of the things that I would consider to be a core aspect of Monster Hunter, because it adds immersion. It's like, oh, my hunter is in a hot area. I need to drink a cold drink to make up for the fact that I'm in this hot area. It adds immersion. It makes me feel like I'm a part of the world, like I can't just walk into a place that's surrounded by burning lava. I know it still doesn't make a lot of sense that, oh, but if you just have like an ice cold drink of water, you can walk into it. But, you know, it adds another element to it that makes it a little bit more immersive to me. But again, it was another feature that was deemed too inconvenient. I would even have stories where, you know, I'd be running around and suddenly I'd be in a fire area. Suddenly the potion would run out and I'm in the middle of the fight and my hunter starts taking damage. It's like, oh crap, I need to get away from the monster to re-drink my thing. And here's the other thing. In the old games, whenever you would drink a potion, right, it's not as easy as it is nowadays. You're drinking a potion and your hunter's moving at the same time. In the old games, you're drinking a potion, you do the flex emote, do all of the things, right? And you know, it would be a bit more of a committal of an animation. You'd be more committing to something than nowadays where you can just drink a potion, pop it whenever, middle of a monster being enraged, and it's not really a big deal. The having to replenish your buff in the middle of the fight added its own set of mechanics. Now, an interesting thing is that when this was announced that the hot and cold potions were going to be removed, I jokingly said that, like, oh, what's next? You no longer need to eat to recover your stamina? Maybe we get rid of sharpness so that you don't have to deal with that particular mechanic? And the interesting thing is that I just want you guys to remember that last one. Okay, just remember that last thing I said. You don't have to deal with sharpness. You just get rid of sharpness altogether. But for now, let's return to the tweet just for a little bit. Is shockproof a bad skill? Like I said at the start, most people will argue it isn't. Most of you even argued instantly it's a fantastic skill. It's one of the best skills in the game because, you know, it makes things be more efficient. You can be more efficient. You can just be on top of the monster. You get more uptime. You can increase your DPS output, do all of these things. This skill effectively, for starters, makes Brace useless, which is another skill that's in the game, but that's not really saying much. There are plenty of skills that are in the game that nobody really uses because they're useless skills. And somebody's going to say, ah, but Rurikhan, if I get like level 3 Brace, I can withstand attack X from monster Y. And it's like, and does anybody actually use it? Does anybody actually use Brace 3? I can see some people using maybe Tremor 3, maybe even Windproof in certain fights. But Brace 3? Come on now, be reasonable. So with Shockproof, basically just removes Brace. As I was saying, tripping another player is inconvenient and inefficient. Getting blasted by Wyvern Fire is inconvenient and inefficient, very much the same way as getting thrown into the air by a hammer. If your attacks are interrupted, there's a DPS loss. You are losing your uptime. There's this mentality of over-optimization to the level of MMOs nowadays. Like, in case you guys aren't aware, this is the mentality of an MMORPG player. Like, whenever you are fighting a boss, you need to make sure that you optimize your uptime. You need to be dealing damage at all times to make sure that your DPS comes out properly on the DPS meters. And it just kind of sucks to see that mentality really, you know, jumping into Monster Hunter to the level that it has. I have nothing against competitive speedrunning and all of that stuff. Quite the opposite. I learn a lot from speedrunners in terms of the skills that they use, or even the, you know, the weakness, not the weakness of monsters, but like the openings of monsters that they'll explore. And you have a lot of really amazing moments that you get from speedrunners. I think that's great. I just feel like not everybody in the player base needs to play like they're a speedrunner, because a lot of people are just not skilled. Like, myself included, don't get me wrong, I'm not skilled enough to be a speedrunner, all right? I have a lot of respect for speedrunners. I talked about this at length. I think they showcase incredible things in the game, but I feel like not everybody should strive to be as competitive as speedrunners. Monster Hunter, in its essence, is not really a competitive game. It is a cooperative game to have fun hunting the monsters, getting the materials, upgrading your stuff, and all of this. And I know that a lot of people are probably going to be thinking, well, Rurikhan, I've seen a lot of your live streams. You've just never been on the receiving end of a Wyvern Fire. You don't know how frustrating it is. And the actual truth is I have been. It's very rare because there's not a whole lot of Gunlance players out there. But when it happens, I actually find it to be really fun. As a matter of fact, I think that there is a degree of skill to how you do wyvern fires in order to be able to wyvern fire safely in front of other players without knocking them down. Sometimes, in my case, if you actually watch through my live streams, you'll notice that sometimes, you know, because somebody is close to me, you'll see me aim the wyvern fire up because I know the approximate hitbox at which the wyvern fire is going to hit, and I know how to turn it in a way that is not going to affect another player that's next to me. Is it perfect? No. Sometimes I'll still hit the other player. Sometimes I'll even do it intentionally, depending on who the other player is. But you get the idea, right? I can aim the wyvern fire either up or down or sideways to hit different parts of the monster without, you know, affecting my team members. And I personally think that player positioning is a key tactical element of Monster Hunter. I think it's a core feature that you should position in a way that makes sense for everybody, as opposed to just like, well, just get one bracer, get one shockproof, and ignore every other player in the game. It's like, well, at this point, are we doing monster fighting or are we doing monster hunting? I feel like friendly fire is a part of that experience. As a matter of fact, I was watching a couple of videos earlier today about Remnant 2, which is another game that I'm going to be playing here on the channel. And I was very happy to see that they still have a component of friendly fire. I think that this is something that is, and I know that sometimes it leads to griefing, sure, but it's like the amount of times this actually leads to griefing is so small in my experience. It's such a small minority of times that this leads to griefing that the fun aspect that you get to have when you're playing with your friends and, you know, wyvern fire happens at the worst possible time, it's just fun. It's just having fun with your friends. I don't understand this mentality. It's like, no, it's inconvenient, it's inefficient, and it affects my DPS output, and therefore I don't want it. How about the tactical skill of positioning yourself in an appropriate way? Hammers go to the head, longswords go to the tail. How about that? Gun lances go wherever, because we have true damage. It doesn't really matter. Position yourself in a way that you're not in anybody else's way, right? I feel like this is a conversation that we need to have, because this is something that effectively is going to be what defines the next Monster Hunter. I want to remind everybody of what I said at the start of this video. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just making my argument, and I'm willing to listen to your argument in the comment section. I feel like I've had a lot of fun and memorable moments that were done because of friendly fire. Hell, there's a video with in Eric's channel of, you know, 3 players shooting Eric's with light bowguns while he's trying to kill a monster. That was fun, you know? I mean, if effectively what we're doing is just removing friendly fire, then let's just remove the mechanic altogether from the game. Is that what we're doing? Is that the way that... You know what I'm saying? It's just like there are things that I feel should be preserved that are fun in the game. And this goes beyond friendly fire. Like I talked about, restocking, hot and cold drinks, and we'll get into a couple more here. Now, during a recent live stream, I was chit-chatting while I was hunting. I'm always talking about random stuff, and this time we were talking about my current gunlance build. And I realized that I was praising a skill that I got from the Amat's Warmer set, which is Heaven Sent. Now, for those of you that don't know what Heaven Sent does, maybe because you haven't been playing the game for a while, or maybe you're new to Monster Hunter or whatever, what Heaven Sent does, and this is a new skill for Sunbreak, is, I'm going to read you the description of the skill. Activates when not taking damage for a while during combat with a large monster. The effect is lost when you are knocked back or strayed too far away from the monster. Now, at level 1, what the skill does, and this is a 3-level skill, decreases damage once and reduces stamina consumption while active. Performing a switch skill swap will recover sharpness and reload ammo. So every time that you do a switch skill swap when this thing is active, it'll sharpen your weapon. And it will also fully reload your weapon if it's a bowgun or, in my case, a gun lance. It even reloads the wyvern stake, which I was like, wow, okay. Then, at level 3, Also nullifies stamina and sharpness consumption. So at level 3, once this skill triggers, sharpness as a skill effectively ceases to exist. Performing a switch skill swap removes or reduces status ailments. Also, gets rid of status ailments. So effectively, if I am able to activate this skill, which just consists of being in combat with the monster without you getting hit for a little while, so there is a certain level of skill involved there, I can ignore the sharpness mechanic in the game. And you might be like, well, okay, but, how often have you been able to activate the skill since you've gotten it? And the reality is, since I started using this skill, I've never sharpened my weapon again. I mean, maybe a couple of times when the monster is switching zones, so I'm not in combat and, the skill goes away. And I'm like, oh, I might as well sharpen a little bit. But like in combat, never sharpen again. Ever. Like whenever the skill triggers, I'll switch skill swap once or twice. Full sharpness. And then because the skill is triggered, I'm, sharpness doesn't exist. I can just do whatever the hell I want. So this basically allows me to remove the sharpness mechanic, which is something that I said earlier as a joke. And the worst part is I found myself celebrating this. Isn't this a weird state of affairs where I was like, oh man, sharpening is so inconvenient. I put this skill on, don't ever have to do it again. And I understand that this is something that you could already do to an extent, like for instance in Monster Hunter World with the Master's Touch skill, and even in Rise Sunbreak with Master's Touch, if you build right, you can also effectively kind of ignore sharpness. With Protective Polish, you still have to sharpen. You can get some things that kind of mitigate the effects of you doing the sharpness thing, but removing it completely and me celebrating it was a weird thing. I think that the overabundance of convenience that we've got, that we basically call quality of life, is something that is becoming subtractive of the core fundamentals of Monster Hunter. Now, another realization that I had during this live stream that I was doing, this was a community live stream. You can find it in the channel. It says Community Hunts. Because I just wanted to hang out with you guys, level a little bit of anomaly rank, and people are always asking me, Rurikhan, you gonna hunt with your viewers? And I was like, you know what? Anomaly research ranking is a good time to do that. Get a bunch of levels, play with people, make the grind a little bit more bearable. It was a tremendously fun stream. Had an absolute blast. But during this stream, there was another thing that I realized. And that was that a majority of the quests that we did were arena quests. Now, I'm not saying they all took place in the actual arena with the gate, but the fact is, Sunbreak essentially has 3 arenas. You have the arena itself, the gate, you have the Forlorn arena, and then you have the Infernal Springs. These are all arenas. You can say, oh, well, these are different. They're arenas. There's one zone, the monster can't leave, he's trapped there, and you bring 4 hunters in to beat the crap out of him, and the monster just can't leave that zone. Now, sometimes that's actually a bad thing, depending on the skill of your hunters, because, some of these monsters, once they get really spruced up, they can be quite challenging to handle in a tight space. But at the end of the day, these were arenas. And the reason we were doing these quests is because they were the most convenient ones. We don't have to go get spirit birds. There's a rainbow bird right at the beginning. You could attribute the fact that we're doing these quests maybe to the spirit birds mechanic. A lot of players don't want to deal with the spirit birds mechanic. But fundamentally, the anomaly research grind is so beastly massive that people just want to, I just want to go to a place where I beat a monster to death as fast as I possibly can, get it done. So it's convenient. You jump into an arena, you kill the monster, he's right there, he can't leave, there's nothing you can do. You get a rainbow bird right at the start, boom, done. And if you really think about it, you're not really hunting. You call that hunting? The monster's right there, he can't leave. Nothing he can do. We're not hunting him. This is a killing. It's like a mercy killing. You just go in there and you butcher it. It's a boss fight, not really a monster hunt. At least not in my opinion. Let me know what you think about that in the comment section below. But it was another strange realization. It's like, wow, we really are getting rid of a lot of core fundamental, at least things that I thought were core fundamentals of this series, in the name of convenience. Now, this is also potentially the reason why I like Heaven Sent as much. Because when you're locked in an arena with a monster, sharpening becomes something a little bit challenging. Particularly some of these monsters like, say, Risen Shigaru... Let's actually say EX Risen Shigaru Magala, which is just a Shigaru Magala on absolute crack cocaine that won't stand still for more than like 200 milliseconds. Every 200 milliseconds, he needs to be doing an AoE that covers the entire arena. So there's also something to say about the power creep of both the hunters and the monsters. We've reached levels that, in Sunbreak at least, that I find to be maybe a little bit ridiculous, where it's more, again, it's that whole concept of it's more Devil May Cry than necessarily Monster Hunter. And I don't see that necessarily as a terrible thing, as something that is kind of like an experiment for the team, like, hey, let's try and make this as Devil May Cry as possible. Because at the end of the day, I still think it's fun. I think it's tremendously fun. But it is not necessarily the thing that attracts me the most to Monster Hunter. I mean, I would argue there's a reason why I'm still in the... What am I think I'm almost at 260 anomaly research ranking, and the cap is 300, by the way. I'm still at 260, and I'm not really in any rush to get to 300 because it just takes too long. But, yeah. With those situations, Heaven Sent makes sense for me because there's not that many sharpening openings. Like I said, 200 milliseconds and Risen Shaggy needs to be basically pummeling everything into the dirt. So when you think about all the things that I've said so far, in Sunbreak we're doing more boss fights than necessarily hunts. I mean, even in the regular maps, you're not really hunting. Even if you're not in these arenas that I'm talking about, you're not really hunting because you always know where the monster is. There's one very small exception, which is Chameleos. Whenever he goes invisible, you can't see where he is, but he usually goes invisible in the same area that you're at. I think he rarely goes invisible and runs away, if that even happens. So even when he's invisible and you can't see him on the map, you know that he's close. So it's a moot point, right? So even in regular maps, are you hunting? You always know where he is. They can get away, but it's not like there's a mechanic like, say, paintballs, that he can actually get away and you don't know where he is. That can't really happen. There's no mechanic associated with a monster's location. And like I said earlier, I never thought that I would say this, but I do miss paintballs. I miss them. I miss the inconveniences. I miss needing to actually prepare properly for a hunt, having my inventory properly organized with the consumables that I need for that hunt, and having those restrictions placed upon me of the hot and cold drinks. You know, oh, I forgot the hot and cold drink. Okay, you can go to the map and scavenge it, or you can leave and come back. Figure it out, whatever you want. We're getting to an age where loading screens, even on the Switch for Rise and Sunbreak, they're not that bad. I mean, loading screen in Sunbreak on the Switch, it's like a couple of seconds. Not really the end of the world if you have to go back because you forgot something, but that's just my thoughts when it comes to that. And, you know, it all just made me wonder, how far down the convenience road should we really go? Because if you really think about it, the most convenient way of getting materials to upgrade things is to one-shot the monster. Oh, I'll just go in, one-shot the monster, I have my materials. There, that was convenient. Didn't have to fight it. Just go in there, one-shot it. Boom, done. Problem solved. Have all the materials, carve it. Hell, maybe let's not even have it be one-shottable, let's have it be two-shottable. First shot puts him into, puts him into the sub 25% capturable state, so that you can capture him in case you need to capture materials as opposed to the materials. But you know what the problem with that is, that even one-shotting the monster still requires you to load into the quest and then load out of the quest. Even though those loading screens are reasonably fast, they still take a little bit, so the actual most convenient way would be to just press a button at the hub and just getting the materials handed to you. Something like, say, for instance, the Steamworks. Go to the Steamworks, press a button, except instead of you getting consumables like you got in Iceborne, you get monster materials. Just keep pressing the button. There's no limit. That's the most convenient way of getting stuff. Maybe you think this is an exaggeration, but I also thought that the removal of the sharpness mechanic was an exaggeration, and not only I successfully removed it through my build, but I celebrated it. It's weird. It's a very strange feeling. Now, I want to make sure that people understand one thing. I love Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. I think it's an incredibly fun game. I just happen to miss the inconveniences that, to me, make Monster Hunter what it is. And I hope that Monster Hunter 6 is a little bit more grounded, even if I have to lose Blast Dash. I'll take the hit, you're welcome. But anyway, now more than anything, I'm more curious to hear from you. What do you guys think about this? Do you think that we need more inconveniences, or do you like all of the conveniences and quality of life that we've gotten and you don't want to give them away? I'm not saying that I have the right answer. I'm not saying that I'm correct. I'm expressing the way that I personally feel about it. Now let's hear from you guys. Thank you all very much for watching. If you want any of your favorite streamers, content creators, whatever, to react to this, send them the video. Like I always said, anybody can react to my stuff, watch my stuff, repackage it, edit it, do whatever. So long as you're not blatantly re-uploading it, do whatever you want with my videos. I've always said this. This has always been my policy when it comes to this kind of stuff. So yeah, everybody's welcome to react to this, whatever, give me your thoughts, all of that jazz. But for now, that's going to be it. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. If you did not enjoy it, hit the dislike button. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section down below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.